welcome back to the channel. I'm Rochelle, this is Brampton Gardener, and today's video is going to be a little bit different. So I have, as you can see, a ton of plants, a ton of flowers. Look at this beauty. Ooh, I'm so excited. But it's just not ready yet to plant anything out. My last frost date is coming up this week, but I usually wait on, warmer stuff a couple of weeks after that. Here in, I'm in Brampton, Ontario, which is a suburb of the GTA or Greater Toronto area. Traditionally, we all wait until the Victoria long weekend, which this weekend is the 18th through the 20th. That's kind of traditionally when it's safe to plant out. So normally I don't really put anything in the ground that's not cold hardy prior to that date. And then at that point, I kind of just keep an eye on the 10-day forecast after that, because there's been, we've had frosts end of May before, and these peppers and tomatoes are very sensitive to that. So I don't want to have to deal with anything like that. So prior to being able to plan things out, it is good to kind of plan, and I'm not the best planner, but I do like to try and plan out my containers. So this video is going to be a review from my planters last year. I'm going to take you step by step through each one, like as I planted it up, how it looked mid-growth, and then what it did at the end of the season. And I will talk about what I did right and what I did wrong. And nasturtiums were wow. So if you have any nasturtiums that you plan on putting into pots, you're going to want to make sure you watch this video first. So without further ado, let's get into it and let's go look at some beautiful plants from last year. So let's start out right in the front yard with the urns. And this year I went with, I put some cannas at the back, which they took a long time to catch up. So this year I'll make sure that I put some taller ones in to start with. And then I had 3 coleus in the middle. I had petunias around the outside, and then the green sweet potato vine in the front to help it all fill in. And then of course, I added a few nasturtiums because I went a little nasturtium crazy last year, as you shall shortly see, and I ended up putting them everywhere. The second planter, I went in and I used the pansies that were already there in the front part, and then I went and added in some pink polka dot plant. I had a few of the impatiens that I had grown from seed, as well as some of the coleus. So I had high hopes for this planter. The colors were kind of bright and bold, and I really was hoping that it would turn out well. I will admit this top planter never really filled my vision. It wasn't too bad. You'll see by the end. It did fill in, but it was kind of floppy and weird. I think I'm just going to go all in on nasturtiums and lobelia this year, and then a few things in the back for some height. But I'm not going to waste my time with too many little things. I'm just going to kind of try and keep it all one. But as you can see, by the time of my first garden tour, things were really starting to fill in. Those nasturtiums are cray cray. The petunias are doing really well. The cannas are coming up in the back. I really wanted them to do a little bit more than they did. So this year, I'm hoping to get taller ones to start with. But it was very full. It was very colorful. The petunias, the impatiens, everything did really well in there. And this planter was spectacular. I absolutely love blue in the garden, and it's very hard to find those true blue plants, and so that's why I'm a big lover of lobelia in things. So this one I had the pansies, the pink polka dot plant, the impatiens, and the coleus. So everything you see in the front garden here, all of this was grown from seed except for the sweet potato vine. Yeah, so we're gonna say this is a very stylized planter, but nope. By the end of the season, it was pretty much overgrown. I was picking up nasturtium seeds all over the place, and we'll have to see if any of those actually sprout out front. That'd be kind of fun. But you can see they really took off. They really filled in, and I was really, really happy with how the front planters, they did actually really, really outperform what I was expecting. And some of those plants got huge. The top one, but this one was beautiful. So now on to the backyard. This planter here at the front, right outside the door, I have 3 dwarf tomatoes in there. I put in some nasturtiums, coleus. I made a mistake in the basket on the right-hand side, and I put right there the climbing nasturtiums. Oh my goodness, climbing nasturtiums are absolutely terrifying. They take over. So I have to be very careful when I put any nasturtiums this year. Here we are in July, and you can see they are really starting to fill in. They're doing beautifully. The tomatoes in there are really producing. You can see all those blooms getting ready to go. Dexter was thrilled to have so many Tiny Tim tomatoes at easy access, and I was really impressed with how this was taking off, and really excited to see the impatiens start blooming. Oh my goodness, this is August. By the end of the season, the impatiens were just insane. There were only 2 in that one planter on the left in the yellow pot, and it was getting a lot of sun and plenty of water, and they were just absolutely gorgeous. The tomatoes did really well there as well, and I'll probably be doing something very similarly in those areas. That vine, I think I might put one of my new Morning Glories on there. We'll see this year. But I'm definitely going to do the same thing with some of the peppers and the tomatoes, because everything just was really, really happy last year, and I loved it. And now on to the giant planters in the backyard. So this might possibly have been my favorite one. I went in with a lot of plants, which is really fun to do, because when you grow it all yourself, it's really cheap to just kind of overstuff these planters. And so that can also be a problem. So the one thing I did buy in this planter here, as you can see in the back, is the King Tut grass, which I absolutely adore. I look for those every year. And then in the front, I bought one of the sweet potato vines. Everything else was from seed. I had the Jasper millet, I had petunias, I had 4 o'clocks, and I had, nasturtiums. Oh my goodness, I had some climbing nasturtiums accidentally got planted in that planter. So there it is, sitting there just after a couple weeks, and taking pictures every day because I was so proud of it. And then look how cute it is. So at this point, you could still see the pot. You could still see the individual plants, and everything was really coming together nicely. I was really excited to see how this was just going to take off for the summer. And take off it did. The sweet potato, the sweet potato vines did good, but the climbing nasturtium, this one was like 5-6 feet long. At some point, I was kind of hoping they would just go up the fence, but they decided they wanted to just climb over everything. They attached themselves to my other planters. They went through the garden beds. I am growing more of them this year, but I'm going to be very careful where I plant them. I'm not going to be putting them in any of the pots. I'm going to try and keep it up against the fence. But the backyard was looking so pretty at this point in time, and then pretty soon you couldn't even see it anymore. It got buried. Next up are my sweet little planters on my plant stand, and these of course are in full shade, so I went heavily with all my shade plants, which were the coleus, the lobelia. I had a lot of impatiens. I did try this ornamental mint, a tiny little plant in there. It did nothing, it died, so that was not a good choice. But everything else, the really loved being in there. At the back, you can see I have a black-eyed Susan vine. I can never remember what it's called. And it really, I was impressed with how well it held up in those shady conditions. Being as they are in full shade pretty much, they will be growing a lot slower than the other planters. But by July, I was really happy to see the progress they had made. And honestly, by the end of the season, the color, when you came out onto the deck, just absolutely full of those hot pink impatiens. Gorgeous. And I'm so sad that none of my impatiens sprouted this year. I don't know what happened, so I will have to go in and unfortunately buy some plants. That's going to be sad, but it's necessary because I really need that pop of color in that spot. And this poor pot down here under the big tree, it started out great. It had a lot of potential. We had petunias, I had an asparagus fern, there was canna lilies, there were 4 o'clocks, and nasturtiums. So at the start, things were really going well. They were just kind of all filling in nicely and evenly. The nasturtiums were putting on a bit of growth, but they weren't too terribly obnoxious. That came later. So yeah, let's fast forward a few months and check on them again. So over time, things in the middle started to die as they were not getting enough sun, as the nasturtiums just took over. And I did try to keep pushing them down. Like every time I watered them, I would kind of come in and push them down and be like, nope, you need to give some space to the plants behind you. But they did not listen. I came in with a few bigger things, the Gerber daisies, stuff like that. Nothing was working. it was just, I just let it go. It turned into like the cousin it planter. And I learned my lesson. So next year nasturtiums are going to have to go into a very carefully curated container and not just be put willy-nilly in with everything else. So all in all, I feel it was a pretty great year for the planters. You know, there was a lot of color, there was a lot of lush foliage and a lot of blooms, and I was able to save lots of seeds from nasturtiums because I had so many nasturtiums, and I actually do love them. This year they're going to go in their own special planters all by themselves. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this look back at my planters from 2023, and get planting yourself. See you next time. Bye.